Good afternoon, dear friends, and welcome to the 2021 Seidenberg Innovation Awards and our finale celebration. As always, our special and deepest thanks go to our PACE family, friends, and all of the supporters who are with us today. And we'd like to take a moment to recognize our sponsors for their transformative support of the Seidenberg and PACE University missions. Our honoree today, Mr. Josh Silverman, Chief Executive Officer of ETSI. Our visionary sponsors, Bronzeware, Morgan Stanley, the PVH Foundation, and PwC. Our supporter sponsors, including Accenture, ADP, Deloitte & Touche, Highpoint, National Grid, New York Presbyterian, and Qualitest. And our friend sponsors, including Seventh Online, the At Company, Blue Yonder, Genpact, HKA, Infosys, MuleSoft, PwC, Sirius, Tillerman, Verizon, Wilkie Farr and Gallagher, and PACE alum and Seidenberg board member Mike Zabranik, Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Fiserv. Thank you also to our alumni and friends who have made thoughtful donations of time, talent, and gifts to make this event a success. It's because of your support that we're able to accelerate Seidenberg's mission of STEM diversity and inclusion in higher education and the workforce. To express our appreciation, it is my honor and privilege to introduce PACE President Marvin Krisloff.
Thank you, Dean Hill, and welcome everyone to the 2021 Seidenberg Innovation Awards. And I want to pay a special congratulations and thank you to the faculty, staff, and students for making it through this year. It's been an extraordinary year, and I know that it took much dedication and perseverance to get through this year, and so congratulations to all of you. I look forward to when we're going to be able to gather again in person, but I'm happy to see so many people joining us today for this virtual celebration. On behalf of PACE University, I want to extend congratulations and deep appreciation to Josh Silverman, today's honoree. Josh has had an amazing career. He co-founded Evite. He has run major businesses, serving as CEO of Skype and president of consumer services, products and services at American Express. Today, he is the CEO of ETSI. And as Josh, you said to me when we were talking quite a while ago, for ETSI, this has been a moment. This has been a strange time, and your leadership has really catapulted ETSI to a great position, leadership position. You also serve as chairman of Code Nation, which is a nonprofit that helps students in under-resourced schools gain both coding skills and professional experiences. In other words, Josh knows what it takes to succeed in business, in technology, in entrepreneurship. He's a shining example of the kind of innovative and interdisciplinary mindset we built at the Seidenberg School. The Seidenberg Innovation Award was launched 24 years ago to highlight the productive connections between the Seidenberg School and the business and tech communities. Each year, we honor distinguished companies and individuals who leverage technology to deliver lasting business and social value to industry and their communities. And Josh, you are really an ideal honoree. I've had the pleasure of getting to know Ivan Seidenberg and the pleasure of getting to know you over my past few years in New York. And I think you both, Ivan and you both, exemplify creativity and compassionate leadership. And I think Ivan would be very happy to see you bearing his name. Josh, I thank you for your leadership support of today's event, and I thank our supporters, our sponsors too. To everyone here, thank you. Your partnership means more through this, even more through this challenging past year, when our students and our community have navigated unprecedented challenges. The proceeds of this event help to prepare the next generation of industry innovators and leaders. As we know, innovation is really in the DNA of Seidenberg and of PACE University. We're building a thriving online education program that helps students earn degrees on schedules that work for them. We're connecting interdisciplinary programs across schools and fields, like Seidenberg's Center for Technology policy on the environment. And under Dean Hill's exemplary leadership, there are new programs being unveiled. Even, I think, how many is it this fall, Jonathan? How many new programs do
You've
we have?
got 3 new programs that will be rolled out this fall: cybersecurity, data analytics, and human-centered design, which is our UX UI program.
And there's more to come.
Indeed.
We are doing everything we can to prepare our students to thrive in the workforce of the future. Your support is crucial to that effort. I thank you all for being here. I thank you, Josh, for your transformational impact and for creating new opportunities and possibilities for our students. And I thank our alumni, friends, and supporters for your investment in our students, in diverse and inclusive STEM fields, and in the technologists of the future. Thank you.
President Krisloff, thank you so very, very much. And thank you for introducing us to Josh and for making this event possible. And as always, we so appreciate your leadership and your support. And this is, of course, a celebration. And although the pandemic is coming to an end, we've learned how to celebrate by video. So we have a video to celebrate.
Hi, I'm Mike Capone, CEO of Click. I am proud to be an SIA honoree because I believe in driving positive change in our world as part of the work that I and my team are doing at Click together. To be able to do this with my alma mater has special meaning for me, as I know the power of a PACE degree and the impact that PACE grads make in the field and in their communities. Just as I have benefited, I want to ensure that PACE students today have the support needed for them to be good global citizens and continue the work we are doing to positively change the world.
Hello, I'm Surikant, Chairman of Tata Consultancy Services North America and a proud 2015 SIA honoree. As the world rebounds from the impact of COVID-19, it is critical to empower students with 21st century skills so that they can create innovations that benefit society at large. I am extremely proud of TCS's long-standing investments in pioneering STEM education programs like Ignite My Future in School and Go IT. Through these programs, over 1 million K-12 students across America have now gained computational thinking and digital innovation skills. By leveraging the best of TCS, we're building pathways for women, youth, and underserved groups.
I am proud to be associated with Seidenberg School and being an SIA honoree. What impresses me most about the school is its people. The faculty, the administrators, and the students, all who work hard to make this world a better place. As a minority in the technology leadership space, I am very impressed with what the school has been able to accomplish. Being in the top 3% of private colleges in America for most diverse, and having a 29% representation of females in its student body. Very impressive, and way to go, Seidenberg. Thank you for everything that you do, and congratulations to all of the SIA recipients.
Hi, I am proud to be an SIA honoree for 2 reasons. I received my undergrad and graduate degrees from PACE, which equipped me very well for the skills needed to have a successful career on Wall Street. I also think it's really important to give back to our next level, our next generation of leaders. Most of you are sitting in that audience right now. Have a good day.
With your support, I'm able to graduate this year with the degree of my dreams and pursue a career in the field of computer science.
Hi, I'm Srinikil Raja. With your support, I was able to stay at school and continue my graduation during the toughest days of my life in this pandemic. I would sincerely thank you for all the support that you have given me.
Your investment has enabled me to pursue computer science research on file system and focus on my studying without financial stress. Thank you.
Josh, thank you for making that possible. And in your role as CEO of Etsy, you have touched a lot of people in our community, and we'd like to show you how.
Hello, my name is Teresa Rodriguez and I am the owner of Supermoon Jewelry, which is a handmade jewelry shop on Etsy where I sell handmade rings, necklaces, earrings, and all that fun stuff. And we also donate the proceeds of our sales each month to support a different cause or charity to give back to the community. I decided to start my Etsy shop because I've always been a super creative person. I have an eye for design and I love working with my hands, so I decided to take that love and that passion to the next level and share it with the rest of the world on a platform like Etsy. Etsy has 100% given me the opportunity to achieve my creative and entrepreneurial goals by cultivating a platform full of creatives like myself, or people who find value in shopping small, and for that I am eternally grateful. I would like to end off by giving a huge thank you to Etsy CEO Josh Silverman for creating a platform as amazing as this one and giving creative individuals like myself the opportunity to turn your passion into either a side hustle like me or into a full-time business, which I hope to become in the future. I cannot wait to continue to support Etsy as a seller and a consumer in the years to come, and I am so excited to see all of the amazing things that Etsy turns into in the future. Thank you again.
Hi, my name is Julia. And my name is Ina, and we're the owners of Charmed Witchcraft on Etsy. We both always knew that we wanted to create something together and definitely sell on some sort of platform. And when our interests kind of came together for this one thing, the spell jar like jewelry that we make and sell on Etsy, it was just kind of like the perfect thing for us. For us, witchcraft really became a source of empowerment. So we created Charmed Witchcraft because we wanted to empower other people through witchcraft the same way that we were being empowered. So each spell jar serves as an aid in your own self-empowerment. We have protection, healing, happiness, anti-anxiety, prosperity. In the spirit of empowering others, we find it really important to give back to the community as well. So a portion of each of the proceeds from the different jars goes to different organizations.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I run an Etsy shop called Jessica Ann Rubin, where I sell laser cut acrylic earrings like the ones I'm wearing now. I learned to make these while I was studying at Pace and have done it sort of as a side business for the past several years since then. I've been on Etsy for about 4 years now. It's really nice to have a platform that I can show my work to different people, and people can find me through there and see other creators and things like that. So I'm happy to be a part of this, and thank you.
Hi, I'm Caitlin, and together with my sister Hannah, we run a company called Miles and May.
We sell phone cases, prints, handmade jewelry, and stationery. Etsy's been a great platform for us to use to set up our small business. We've been able to use a really simple process and start selling our products straight away. It's also connected us with different customers and traffic that we would have never come across having set up our site on our own.
We're really grateful to Josh for creating this amazing community and platform for small businesses like ours.
Talk about impacting a lot of people, and so many people in the Pace community. I mean, we know that we had folks who worked with Etsy, but we didn't know how many, or really how quite remarkable their products are. And I definitely need one of those anti-anxiety jars. So if you can set that up for us, that it would be a wonderful thing. But Josh, thank you. I am honored and delighted to introduce you as our honoree for innovation in entrepreneurship. The impact that you have and the legacy of the industry pioneers that we have seen come through the Seidenberg School at this event in the last 24 years are people who drive lasting change on a global scale. And you embody this award, Josh, through 2 decades of forward-thinking leadership. You have been at the highest levels of corporate America. You have been at ground zero as an entrepreneur and truly have done it all. And you blend the best practices of business and technology with the social conscious and always with an eye to helping people in the community. You have a singular track record in growing consumer technology companies and scaling global marketplaces as a result. As the Chief Executive Officer of Etsy, Josh, you lead a company as it builds this platform that, as we just saw, empowers creative entrepreneurs around the world. Josh serves on the board of directors at Etsy and Shake Shack. And in addition to practicing transformative leadership in the field, Josh is committed to civic engagement and positive change in the community. Josh serves as chairman of Code Nation, was previously a member of the Stanford Business School Management Board and the Lincoln Center Board. Josh, your accomplishments and amazing track record of paying it forward inspire us to excel in all aspects of our lives and work. Through your example as an industry and community leader, you are forging paths towards equity and inclusion for the future workforce. It is for these reasons that you embody the spirit of this award. Josh, on behalf of the Seidenberg School and Pace University, it is my honor to present you the 2021 Award for Innovation in Entrepreneurship. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm deeply honored and moved. That was a wonderful video, and thank you so much for highlighting the sellers who bring so much passion and creativity to Etsy. We have 5 million now sellers who sell on Etsy, and they're each so wonderful in their unique ways. I am deeply honored by this award, and it's always awkward because the personal pronoun you or he or singular is used, but in fact, business is a team sport. And you know, I have wonderful colleagues at Etsy. Everywhere I've been, it's been a team sport, and it's been a joint effort of wonderful colleagues to come together to be successful. And so I'm so proud to be here together with Pace. You play such a vital role providing a really world-class education to such a broad and diverse population. As a team sport, we can't do it unless we have all the great people on the team. And there is so much talent, both all across the United States and around the world, and providing that great talent access to great educations is critical. Like I am here as a member of a team at Etsy, I also stand, like all of us, on the shoulders of those who came before. So I'm a second generation college student. My father is the first in our family to go to college. His parents worked in the sweatshops and arrived in New York City as refugees. And he grew up in the projects and was able to get a full scholarship to Brooklyn College and eventually go to medical school and pull our family into the middle class. And one generation later, here I am. And so I'm so grateful for the opportunity that was provided to my family, and recognize that there is so much talent that is equally deserving of those opportunities. And I know that at Pace, that is very much the mission, to make sure that you provide a world-class education that provides people with the preparedness for the future. So for my father, that was medical school. And in his day and today, if you're a physician, it's pretty likely that you're going to be able to provide a middle class or better in livelihood for your family. In today's economy and going forward, computer science, the information economy is similar. If you are able to code, it's very likely that you and your family will have a comfortable living. And I think there's tons of people out there with the talent to be able to work with computers, work in the information systems industries, whether they are computer scientists, product managers, designers, but to be part of this new economy. I know at Etsy, we care deeply about bringing a diverse workforce into Etsy. About a third of our engineers are non-male. Over 50% of our entire company is non-male. And we're making a ton of progress with people who identify as Black or Hispanic, Asian. And it's by bringing people with diverse perspectives, diverse experiences together that we build better products, that we have more innovation, that we have more empathy for a broader range of customers. And so we're very, very focused on having the most diverse and inclusive workforce we can, because we know it's good for business. And it's good for our whole community. And PACE is a really critical part of that. So I couldn't be more proud or honored to be partnering with PACE and to receive this recognition. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Josh. Now we have some time to have a really special opportunity to learn more about Josh and from, again, his really unique background. You're not going to talk to someone who has had that breadth of experience from initial startup to high-level corporate, as Josh has had, and he's been incredibly successful at every stop. So there is a lot for us to learn this afternoon. As always, please put questions you might have in the chat room. We really love it when you turn on your cameras. No pressure, but if you feel so inclined, hit that video switch. And Josh, to begin, tell us a little bit about your background and upbringing. You weren't born as a CEO, so tell us a little bit about how you grew up and how that shaped who you are today.
I had, I'd say, an unremarkable middle-class upbringing in Ann Arbor, Michigan. My father worked as a physician at the Indigent Care Hospital in downtown Detroit as part of the University of Michigan Medical Center. And I really wanted to be a performing artist. So in high school, I was a jazz musician. And then when I went to college, I tried really hard to be an actor. And I am where I am today in part because I just wasn't talented enough as a jazz musician or as an actor to be able to earn a living that way. So I had to fall back on something. So my fallback, I ended up majoring in public policy in college and going to work in Washington, D.C. This was in the early 1990s. I had the privilege to work for Senator Bill Bradley on healthcare reform. And it was something I was very, very passionate about. But over time, things in Washington at the time seemed to move very slowly, and it was very hard to have bipartisan compromise. Now we look back at the early 1990s and say, oh gosh, if we could only have as much bipartisanship now as we had then. But I decided that I thought that, at least for me, and I do think there's wonderful opportunities in public policy, and we need good, passionate, smart people in public service. I felt like the private sector was a place where I could have positive impact on my community, where we could move quickly and do things that I think had a positive impact on all the people around us. And so I ended up moving into the private sector for that reason. But this notion of what can I do to be part of a team that has a positive impact collectively on our future is helpful. Maybe because, or at least was very important for me, because I know we might have a lot of current college students or recent grads kind of on this call. I will say that if you'd asked the young Josh, was I going to be CEO? Was I going to be a public company CEO? No way, never in a million years. I think this idea that you have a perfectly formed vision of what your life will be 20 years or 30 years from now can be enormously daunting. And some people have that, and it's a gift, and they're very lucky to have that. I didn't have that. So what I did was I sort of thought forward about 3 years, because about 3 years is as far forward as I could as I could imagine in my younger life, and said, what am I really passionate about right now, where I think if I could achieve this one thing, I would be proud of it. I would work with good people who would make me better, and I would gain skills that would give me more options than I have today. And those criteria turned out to be super helpful. I don't need to decide that I'm going to be passionate and commit my life to this for the next 20 years. That's like so daunting, it's overwhelming, right? But when I graduated from college, I said, national health reform is my passion. It's what I want to do. I know I was a big geek, and don't ask me how, but well, I'll tell you how. I had a professor in college who was amazing at this. I had a woman who'd worked for the Department of Health and Human Services who was really inspiring and really knowledgeable. And she was the best professor I had in college. And she motivated me, and I wanted to do what she did. And so I did everything I could to get that $20,000, actually it was $16,000 a year job working on Capitol Hill. And it was hard to get that job, and I had to do everything, but I was all in. That was my only thing. I wanted to go do that. And I did that, and and it made me better. And now I learned a lot. I met a lot of great people. I worked my tail off. And from that, I met people in the senator's office, Senator Bradley's office, who said, hey, we want you to come and join us in this management consulting firm, and we want you to go advise hospitals and healthcare systems. And I ended up going into management consulting because people I met in the Senate office brought me with them because they were impressed with my work, and sort of on and on. I don't want to bore you with kind of the whole story, but the point is that I think setting a goal that's sort of near term enough that you can get your brain around it, and then really committing to do that one thing really well, for me has been very helpful.
Yeah, and I think that's very powerful advice, especially because we have so many folks on the call this afternoon who just got their degrees. Marvin just handed it to them, and they're really wondering about what's next. And so you go to what you thought was your track in life, and you were going to be this policy specialist and work on national health, and then you take this track into business. Is there a point where the fire lit, where you said, I'm really good at this business thing?
Yeah, I think I did feel like I was better. At least it suited my temperament better in business. But there were a lot of times when I was very uncomfortable. So I ended up going to business school only because I realized that I didn't want to be a management consultant. So I found myself in management consulting, and I did that for a few years. And it's a wonderful job, and I learned a ton, and I'm glad I did it. But I realized I didn't want to do it forever. And the way I realized that is I looked at my boss and my boss's boss and my boss's boss's boss. And I didn't admire any of their lifestyles. I didn't want to be any of them. And that was a pretty good sign for maybe I shouldn't do this for a living, right? And but the fact that I had that pedigree meant I had a chance to, I was lucky enough to get into a decent business school. And that gave me a little bit of a chance to kind of re-platform. I had been so public policy focused in my career. And then coming out of business school, I got a good job with a good company that was very entrepreneurial, that gave me an unreasonable amount of responsibility because it was not the sexiest company in town. There were a lot of really cool companies that came on campus to recruit. I didn't go to one of those. I went to a company no one had ever heard of. And they gave me a job that wasn't sexy, fix our field service business or cut, but they were willing to give me an unreasonable amount of responsibility because they didn't have the huge brand and it wasn't a sexy job. And because of that, I could go and do a lot and learn a lot and push myself a lot. So most of the jobs I've had in life are jobs that I took because no one else wanted them. But I saw something in there that told me, I believe if I have a passion that I can do more with this than most people think. And in doing that, I'll get more responsibility and more learning. But a lot of that has been very uncomfortable. I've been scared and uncomfortable in those moments. And that's okay. That's where I think a lot of the learning and the growth comes from. I ended up quitting that job, the sort of reasonably respectable job I got straight out of business school, to go start my own thing, which became Evite. And that was terrifying. It was really terrifying. Everyone says it's scary. When you go and do it, and many of you have, you'll really, it's hard to quit your respectable job with a steady income to go do something that might well fail. But again, in that stretch was growth. I got to be a CEO. Not that anyone would have hired me at 26 to be a CEO. I just had to go start my own thing. It's the only way I was going to get hired to be a CEO is if I just did it myself and had enough conviction to do it. And put myself in a position where the only alternative to success was failure. And that's kind of where I was when I started that thing. If I didn't succeed, it was going to be a very public, very embarrassing failure. And that was very motivating, more than the money, more than anything else. It was like, I don't want to fail in front of all of my peers and family and all these people who told me it was a stupid idea and I shouldn't do it. I don't want to come back with my tail between my legs and admit that I'd failed. So I darn well better find a way to make this work. And that was very motivating.
And that's another, I think, incredibly powerful piece of advice for our students, because they see Josh Silverman and you know, you've been doing your quarterly calls and you're throughout the media, and they figure, well, he's a CEO and Brown and Stanford Business School, so he doesn't get scared. He just plows through and follows his agenda, and knowing that you really have to force yourself through that fear to work through it and be successful, I think is really important for us to know. And, you know, there's a big association with you as a public figure, as a tech person, right? Josh Silverman's a tech executive. You know, early 90s, if my memory serves me, the perception of the tech industry was quite different. So when did you really latch on to tech with Evite and your successive ventures as you know, as the platform you wanted to work in? Was this in your mind when you were on Capitol Hill, or did you have a revelation when you were in Palo Alto? How did you connect with tech and the tech revolution?
Yeah, it definitely didn't. It wasn't when I was in Washington, D.C. And to set everyone's expectations, my day job when I worked for Bill Bradley was to answer the mail, and we didn't have email then. It was like paper mail. I didn't have an email address. That wouldn't come for years. I took a couple of computer science classes in junior high school, not in junior, like after school classes in junior high school. So I did learn a tiny bit of coding when I was a kid. Mostly to just do Dungeons and Dragons kind of stuff. But I didn't study computer science. Actually, the first computer science class I took in college was in senior year. And I was so bummed to have waited till senior year, because it turns out I loved it. And it's too late by then. If you don't start taking computer science classes in your freshman or latest sophomore year, you can't be a CS major. So no, it really wasn't in my mind. When I went to business school, it was the mid 1990s, 95 to 97, I was in business school, and the internet was exploding all around me. And so by the time my co-founders and I got going with Evite, it was late 1998, which felt very late. Like the internet might have passed us by. We're late to the party in 1998. But it was where the excitement was. It was where the action was. And I'm glad I took the leap. And actually, when I quit my job working for a medical device company to go help co-found Evite, I didn't know what the letters HTML stood for. And so there was a lot of stretch and a lot of growth for me in that. But I'm glad I took the leap. Sometimes when there's a tidal wave coming, trying to catch it is not a bad idea.
Yeah, well, and my gosh, you certainly wrote it successfully and very impressively. You took some time at America.
Dean, I'm sorry, just one thought on that.
Yeah, please.
Just being a lifelong learner, this notion that like you're going to learn everything you need to know in college and then you're going to like apply that for the rest of your life, that might have been true a generation or two ago. It's definitely not true today. So I didn't study computer science in college. In fact, I didn't even study it in grad school. Okay, fine. I'm just going to need to like be really curious and read books and ask a lot of questions, and that's okay. And all of us are going to need to educate ourselves constantly about what's new. The pace of change only accelerates. And so I think all of us need to be lifelong learners. And that's going to allow us to continue to evolve and adapt and grow and take adventures you didn't imagine in your 20s. I hope to take adventures in my 60s and 70s that I am not imagining now in my 50s.
No, I think that's an absolutely fantastic, again, piece of advice and something that we all can benefit from. So you did some time, you went back, you started this business, successful today. You went back to corporate America for a while and did American Express. What drove that decision?
So, you know, I had just left Skype, and running Skype was really exciting for me, and a 1,000-person business that was growing super fast. I wanted to challenge, my craft is leadership, I've discovered. And each of us have the craft we are passionate about. You might be passionate about the craft of coding, or you might be passionate about the craft of design, or you might be passionate about the craft of entrepreneurship. An entrepreneur loves to start things. On my, with Evite, what I learned is I liked Evite more and more the bigger it got. The actual going from zero to something was not my biggest passion. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, it is. They like it less and less the bigger it gets. For me, I love the craft of leadership. And that's what I'm sort of passionate about and dedicated to. So I wanted to challenge myself at a different scale. And the American Express job was an enormous job in a company that was over 120 years old, where we want to transform it to become a really technology-led company. And that seemed like a fascinating challenge. I'd never worked for a company that was 10 years old before. So to go to a 120-year-old company or something like that was just fascinating. And I learned a ton, and I'm really glad I did it. And I got to work with amazing colleagues and an incredible brand. And it made me a lot better.
And again, it's such an unusual extreme in a career, but leadership definitely is a line that connects all of those things. And when you came into Etsy, by all accounts, it's a public company, they were very much in need of leadership. So how did you approach that when you were considering taking the position and from the first day you walked in the door?
One of our board members I see on the call, Peggy Smith, who's been such a wonderful mentor to me and such a great board member for Etsy. Etsy is such a wonderful business. We were at a hard time in that moment. So that was mid-2017. And the company had gone public about a year ago, and it was struggling a bit, and growth was really decelerating. And there were a lot of hard things we needed to do together. So I think the most important things were conviction and candor, being very transparent with the team about what we needed to do together, and that it was going to be hard, and that we were going to move fast, and that we were going to be uncomfortable. And the very first day I got up in all hands and I said, we're not on the trajectory we need to be on, but we have all the raw materials. This next period is going to be very hard. And if we are not regularly uncomfortable, we are not moving fast enough. But on the other side of this is the opportunity to cover ourselves with glory. And if we move through this next period in a way that I think we can, I believe we have a chance to do something we can all be proud of for the rest of our lives. We'll look back on and tell our children about this moment because it's important, because it's different. Because Etsy does something unique and important, and it's about more than us. There are millions of entrepreneurs who depend on us to come and bring our A game every single day. And we owe it to them to do this. And I think we lived up to all parts of that. It was, in fact, very hard. It was, in fact, very uncomfortable. Many people decided to leave along the way. We had stand-ups at the leadership team every single night. And agenda item number one was who quit today? And every day there was someone who quit that was like, oh gosh, how are we going to live without this person? But we found a way. And we've got a whole bunch of employees now who've been here during that entire journey who will indeed tell their children about, or I don't mean to imply that everyone will have children. That's hard. Who will be proud of in whatever way they are proud of and talk with their community about the fact that they were here that day, during that period, and played a meaningful, important role in that. And I'm very proud of that.
As well you should be. And you've said that what makes Etsy special is that it creates a human exchange and experience between the sellers and buyers. Can you tell us a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yeah. So when we talk about why does it matter if Etsy were to go away? It does matter. There are businesses where, they're one of 40 people doing it. And if they go away, there's 39 people still doing it. And who kind of cares? But if you look at what's happening in our economy today, I do not believe that immigration is causing the economic stress. I do not believe that trade is causing the economic stress. Automation is what's creating a lot of economic stress in this country. We actually manufacture more things in America now than we did 30 years ago. We just need a lot fewer people to do it. That's why manufacturing jobs are under pressure. We're more efficient. We use robots. So creativity can't be automated. And the opportunity to take your creative passion and turn that into a way to have economic empowerment, I think is very important. And if I look at the other side of that, we are buying more and more stuff that's produced cheaper and arrives faster and ends up in a landfill 2 seconds later. And I think there is a desire to maybe own fewer things, but have those things mean more.
Yeah.
If there's something we've learned in this pandemic, it's that we crave human connection. We want to be together. We want to support each other. So would you rather buy from an anonymous factory one of a million things that were mass produced that look exactly the same? Sometimes you want it cheap. Toilet paper, I just want it to arrive cheap and fast. My socks, I'm not that fussy about them. I'm fine with cheap and fast. For many things in my life, though, I'd rather buy something that was made just for me, that expresses my sense of style and where I actually had a communication with the maker and know that person. And there's a story behind the item. I just think that's a better way to shop. And I think a lot of people want that. And Etsy uniquely does that. That is something that there's no other place that's that. And I think that's an important role we play.
And we sure saw that in the video. I'm just incredibly touched by obviously the creativity and talent that goes into creating those products, but these are people working with a real purpose and they really know their customers and you connect them. And that's very powerful. And, during the pandemic, e-commerce was booming and Etsy sales more than doubled. And you're quoted as saying, this was the time when opportunity met preparedness. Tell us about that.
Yeah, first, we had done a lot of hard things over the past 3 years as a team and for our seller base. We've done some things to make the quality of the customer experience better. And we've talked a bit about fear and risk and stretching and doing hard things and how growth comes from that. And there were plenty of things along the way that we did. Our sellers would tell us when I arrived in 2017, the search engine sucks and don't you dare change the search engine. And they would say like both things at the same time as part of the same sentence and they would mean it. Why? Well, because every day I could log in and type in my keyword and know where I rank in search rank. I'm number 16 right now in my category, and I want to be able to know that. And when you change the search engine, it's harder for me to kind of game it, and it makes life difficult. Don't change the search engine. And my team and I, we said, look, search engine does suck, and we're going to change it like constantly, like all the time. Because we need to iterate. We need to make it better. And that's a constant change and improvement to get it to be better. And by the way, if two different people search for the same keyword, they shouldn't get the same search results. If you search at 9 a.m. and you search at 4 p.m., you may not want to get the same search results. Like modern search results adapt in a way that isn't predictable to log in every day and get the same thing. We observed that many sellers were charging a lot for shipping at a time when the standard on the industry is free shipping on the internet. Now, let's be clear, there's no such thing as free shipping. There's no magical stork that will pick up a package from here and ship it to there for free. Shipping always costs money. So what we mean by that is shipping is baked into the item price. That's what free shipping means. You're not getting it for free. They've just incorporated it, like they've incorporated the raw materials, like they've incorporated the labor cost to produce the thing. They're now also incorporating the shipping cost. And customers prefer that to being surprised at checkout with an added fee. So we told our sellers, we are going to prioritize people who incorporate shipping into the item price. So shipping appears to be free. It doesn't have an add-on cost. And that was uncomfortable for some of our sellers. And we got pushback from that. But it made the buying experience a lot better. And thankfully, we did that in 2019. So by the time 2020 rolled around, the search and discovery experience on Etsy was a lot better. The buying experience on Etsy was a lot better. And all of a sudden, people can't shop in malls anymore. And shopping, like almost everything we do, is habit formed. And people have habits about where they go for everything. And the pandemic caused all of us to have to reshape those habits. Before you buy anything now, you've got to think, where can I go to get that and who might have it in stock? And in that pause, Etsy won. Because we wouldn't have necessarily been tip of your tongue for all these things before. And we were. And Etsy rose to the challenge in that moment. You know, we had an opportunity, but our sellers really delivered on it. And it's one thing to be given an opportunity, it's another to rise to the challenge. And I'm so proud of our sellers for the great work that they did during this period. So to give you some sense of scale, we project that we'll do about $3 billion of sales in the next 3 months, the second quarter of this year. And pre-pandemic, second quarter of 2019, Etsy sellers sold about $1 billion sales, so about triple the size coming out of the pandemic.
That's absolutely incredible. And you and your team know more about consumers, your customers, than just about anybody, I think. So how has the pandemic changed consumers, you know, the e-commerce consumer, the retail consumer for that matter? Do you think buying habits are going to be different now as we come into the post-pandemic world?
Well, so first of all, we're all about to find out, and anyone who tells you they know with certainty is crazy, because who the heck knows, right? This is an unprecedented period we're living through, and we'll have to see. One thing I would observe is many of us, especially those of us who are in the industry, assume that everybody shops online all the time. In fact, large segments of America don't shop online at all. Shopped online 0 times, you know, in 2019 or 2018. And so all of a sudden in the pandemic, people who like to shop in the mall and who like to shop on Main Street were forced to try e-commerce, sometimes for the first time. And most of them found out that they liked what they experienced. It's actually pretty safe. It's quite convenient. There's good selection. And so I think we will see a lasting change where we pulled forward 5 or more years worth of consumer adoption of e-commerce. We also saw a tremendous amount of people. We saw you can't spend on travel, you can't spend on dining. So people are spending on retail to some extent as a form of therapy. And since they can't spend retail in the mall, they're spending on e-commerce. So what I don't know is once people can travel again and dine out again, how much of their wallet will go back to those things. And I think there will be some headwinds for e-commerce generally as a result of that. But when we go back to, you know, most things in life, including shopping, are habit driven, people had a chance to form new habits. It's now been 14 months, amazingly, 13 months. And so people have had a chance to form new habits, and those habits are hard to change and they're hard to break. So now that those new habits are formed, I think that we're going to see a very sustained momentum of e-commerce going forward into the future.
It's interesting. And you know, I think as you shared with us about coming into Etsy and to rebuild that company, you're not afraid to tackle the core problems. And a core problem in our society today, of course, is racism and harassment and anti-Asian hate, as we have seen. And you have been very vocal, and Etsy has been very upfront about its opposition and putting its money where its mouth is to fund efforts to address these really ugly challenges that we have. It can seem overwhelming to fight those things. What do you see from your role as a socially conscious CEO and in all of the things happening in our society, and what can we as individuals do to help support your efforts?
Well, first, I mean, these are incredibly important issues that are not new. 2020 shined a light on issues that most of us were aware have been big problems for a long time. And they are very painful, and they can seem very overwhelming. So I think first, forming a sense of community. You know, what has been very helpful at Etsy is we have ERGs, or employee resource groups, that create a sense of community, so that when, you know, the murder of George Floyd happened, we had a community that could come together to mourn and grieve, and where allies could provide support in a way that was sort of known and structured. And fortunately, we didn't just stand that up in 2020. If we were only beginning that work in 2020, holy cow, I can't imagine, you know. Fortunately, that's work we'd been doing for years. And so we had a strong platform upon which to build. We had shared vocabulary as a company. We had been making commitments together as a company around increasing representation. We've been putting out targets. We've been very transparent about the data. What is our current diversity? We publish it so the whole world can see it. And then we set goals for how we're going to get more diverse. We try as hard as we can to get there. If we fall short, we're very transparent about that. And we talk about how we're going to double down our efforts to get better. And I think those kinds of dialogues and commitments have been very helpful for us as a community to support each other, come together. And then I think speaking out is appropriate. I do think it's appropriate for CEOs to speak out on matters that matter to the whole country, the whole world, the whole economy. You know, Etsy is a marketplace. It gets better. It gets better as it gets bigger. And so does our democracy. So when we look at voting rights, for example, voting rights should not be a partisan issue. I'm so disappointed that we're at a moment where people think that access to voting is a partisan issue. We should all agree that everyone who has a legal right to vote should be voting. You know, I think it's a dialogue that we have together. And none of us are perfect. I'm not perfect. My team are going to be imperfect. But I hope that we will be forgiven when we are imperfect, as long as we are continuing to try and to be transparent and have good, candid conversations.
Great. I appreciate that. And we all appreciate the stand that you've taken. And we want to help, Josh, and I hope we can. And we are almost to that point where our audience, students and faculty and friends get to ask the really good questions. But I just wanted to take a moment. You've had some, I think, really important advice that you're offering, again, as so many members of this community step out into the world of so-called adulting. And they're either starting their first jobs or looking for their first jobs. And you know, what in this really challenging period, you know, if it was the class 2 or 3 years ago, it's always a tough time to go from undergraduate out into the world. But coming in this post-pandemic environment, it's really tough. So what might you share with these folks as they go out there? What can you share that would help maybe reduce the anxiety and instill hope in what's waiting for them out there?
I guess to start with where I started earlier, just what job to take can feel so overwhelming, but I think the stakes might be lower than you think. Get a job with people that you think are good people, with people that you think are talented and that will make you better, and in a place you can have impact. And if you start out in healthcare policy, you might end up in tech, and that's okay. You know, it's okay. What's more important is, are you working with really good people? Are you doing something you're learning from and where you have a real impact? And then when you're there, work hard to make it a different place than you found. Work hard to have a real impact. You know, my first job out of college working for Senator Bill Bradley, my job was to answer the mail. And I spent 40 hours a week answering mail. And I spent many, many more hours after that writing policy papers, advising the senator on what I thought he should do. And nobody asked me for that. And for the first 4 to 5 months, no one even thanked me for that. But at some point, they started to notice my ideas don't totally suck. And maybe we could give this person more responsibility and do more. And try to evolve our processes. And, hey, there's a better way we could be doing this. Why don't we start thinking about doing that? You know, so trying to do my job and then think about how to make my job different and better at the same time. And that's tended to serve me. I appreciate that in everyone who works on my team as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. And thank you again, Josh. What a wonderful conversation this has been. And I do want to give give our community here an opportunity to speak with you. And Peter Gay Clark, I believe you have the first question.
Thank you. Hi, Josh.
Nice to see you again. It's been a long time. How are you?
Great. And so I had the pleasure of meeting Josh when he was an executive at American Express. I was actually a graduate student at Pace University, and I was leading the New York chapter of Black Girls Code. But Josh was a busy executive, but he found time to convene all of the nonprofits focused on CS education in New York City. He was very passionate about CS education. So my question to you is, as a busy executive who had to go home to your family many nights, why did you make that time? And also, how can we convince other executives to do the same?
Yeah, and Peter, I so enjoyed, I think we had dinner together a couple of times doing that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I took this job at American Express, a big fancy job. And when you do that, everybody comes wanting you to donate to their cause. And I quickly realized that I can spend, time and money donating to hundreds of other people's causes, or I can find something that I think I want to have a disproportionate impact on. And there are so many worthy causes out there. There's an infinite number. Everyone who came asking for a donation, they were all legitimate. My heart went out to all of them, and I'd love to do it. But if I did it, I wouldn't have disproportionate impact. So I was actually sitting in Ken Chenault's office in American Express, looking down on the Statue of Liberty and reflecting how my grandparents came through Ellis Island, penniless, with a fourth grade education. And here I am today in this big fancy office in this big fancy company. And so what can I do to provide that kind of economic opportunity to New Yorkers? And so providing computer science education to under-resourced students in New York City is what I decided that was my passion. That was what I wanted to do. And the way I picked that was, anytime I'm trying to make an important decision, I start with, what am I solving for? What are my criteria? So when I said, okay, a lot of people are asking me to donate, what's my lane? Where do I want to commit myself? There's so many good causes out there. So my criteria were, I think it's got to be a very important problem, but I also need to think it's a solvable problem. And third, I need to have some unique value add. Gun rights, super important, super interesting, but it's not at all obvious to me how I connect with gun rights. Prison reform, criminal justice reform, super important, solvable, but I'm not sure what my unique value add is. But I do know some things about tech, and I'm trying to hire thousands of engineers at the time. At American Express, I wanted to hire 1,000 engineers in the United States. And the reason is I needed to hire 5,000, but it was already so hard to hire 1,000, and we need more diversity in tech. And so what can I do to, so that's where I just wanted to learn what's currently happening on the ground. What are all the different initiatives? And Pete, it was so great that you were generous enough to help educate me. And, if we found, I think we had 10 or to a 12 or 14, I think, different leaders who came together, and we all were, the old parable of the blind people trying to figure out what an elephant is, right? So we have all these different nonprofits that are all working on the same thing. But what stunned me was that group of people had not gotten together before. And yet all have the same passion, working on the same problem, and the opportunity to divide and conquer more, share best practices. Sometimes nonprofits can feel like they compete. They're competing for funding. We're not competing. We're all trying to get the same thing done. I do think when you get a little older and you get a little bit of stature, one of the most powerful things one gets is the ability to convene. Just to get the right people in the room to have a dialogue can actually create more value than I might have thought when I was younger. So it's nice to see you again.
Thank you. Nice to see you too.
Indeed, it is always nice to see Peter. Thank you so much for being here. And I think our next question is from our very own George Lopez. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Congrats on your award, Josh.
Thank you.
And thank you in advance for being here. My question is more of a tech question. How do you decide on implementing new features or like new tech solutions on a site like Etsy, whether to like improve business goals or to serve customers?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing we do is we try to separate the worthwhile many from the vital few. So what do I mean by that? You can take a project and say, is this a good idea? Is it going to make our code base better? Is it going to provide better outcomes for our customers? Does it have a positive return? If I spend this much money, will I get more than that back on it? Is it a worthwhile use of time? Is it aligned with our strategy? And would I be proud to tell our board of directors about it? If it meets all of those criteria, it's on the worthwhile many list. Now, if you try to do everything that meets all of those criteria, you're dead in the water. You're going to get nowhere. So you now need to take everything that meets all of those criteria and decide which of those are the vital few. Of all the things that are good ideas, what are the few we're going to do this year? And that's the hard part. Saying no to a bunch of good ideas in favor of the few most important ideas. There are lots of things I see where, like, this part of the code base is old and we'd love to upgrade it. But we say, well, we've gotten by for 10 years with it. Could we go an 11th? And it's not that I wouldn't love to do it. It's just, there's something else even more important. Once we go through that process of deciding what the vital few are, then we define the vital few in terms of outcomes. So I want shipping to feel free on Etsy, for example. We then empower a team of people and we say, it is your job to make Etsy feel free. You have 1 year to do it. Here's the number of people you have. And so we define success and we define constraints, go. And then they figure out how to do it. And they bring their passion and their ingenuity, but it's clear what the milestones are in terms of success, but how to get there, they have a lot of agency. And that I've found to be the best recipe for success. There's so many creative ideas I never would have dreamed of. And as we've shared, I'm not technically competent to tell them how to do it. They do it. And that results in, I've found the best outcomes.
Great answer. And I think we have a follow-on that's quite nice from Karen Joy. Karen?
Hi, thank you, Dean here. First off, I want to say thank you, Mrs. Silverman, for joining us. Those insights were just wonderful. I'm Karen, and I'm doing my master's in information systems at Pace. And one thing I really liked was you mentioned how Etsy strives for empathy on a broader range for customers, for giving customers the stories they believe in. And I relate to that because that's exactly what we've been doing at Pace as well. There's a few organizations like the Blue Collab, New York Design Factory, where we are working with external and international people on user-centric product development. So my question's actually related to that. Now, Etsy is so big and wide, and you have to handle so many things. But something I've faced and have struggled with is, what can you share about Etsy's customer portfolio management? How do you manage customers as well as vendors, the wide base of people, and then to have them come back to you again after every purchase? That's a big question, right? So I guess that's my question. How do you manage all of that?
You mean like when something goes wrong? How do we
or just in general, like what's your strategy of having different customers, having a wide base of customers, but then also making them come back to Etsy after one purchase or after, 2 purchases?
It's a great question. And there's been a lot of evolution now in terms of our ability to do customer segmentation and personalization at a scale that wasn't imaginable before. So we've implemented new technologies. We use a technology, so first of all, we used to have to build all this stuff off the shelf ourselves, and we don't anymore. There are third parties that provide good services. And I'm going to digress on that for just a second. Etsy, many years ago, believed that it should build everything itself. that we want to be different and we want to be handmade. And so we built absolutely everything ourselves. And I don't think that served us well. I don't want us to be different. I want us to be better. So if you can convince me why our home built solution is better than what we can get on the market, I'm all ears. But and the same thing with conventional wisdom. Like conventional wisdom is right until it's wrong in general, right? So it's often right. It's conventional wisdom for a reason. It's often right, but it is certainly not always right. So I'm thrilled when people will challenge conventional wisdom and tell me why there's a better solution out there. I'm thrilled. But if we don't have time and energy, starting with what everyone else does is not usually a terrible answer. And so there's a technology called Segment, or there's a tool called Segment that we rent from someone else that allows us to create customer segmentation. It allows us to define customer segments in a very nimble way and an ever more specific way. Maybe you've only ever bought masks on Etsy and you haven't bought anything else. Or you come reliably once a year on Mother's Day and you're only a Mother's Day person. Maybe you're someone who shops all the time and you've shopped every week for the past 52 weeks in 20 different categories. Those are all different segments. So this allows us to identify those different customer segments. We then use a customer relationship management tool called Braze that allows us to define customer campaigns for each of those segments. And a marketer with no coding skills can take one of those segments and define a campaign. Then that campaign could go out by email. It could go out on their iPhone as an app notification. When those customers come to the site, they might see the message. It's what's called multi-channel. So using these off-the-shelf technologies of Segment and Braze together, we've been able to speak to our customer base in a way that's much more personal. And we spend our time and energy learning how to customize these tools, but we didn't need to spend all the time to build them in the first place. And more now, there's tools that are available that you can just kind of get the API and start working. And that's making all of us, I think, better and more efficient.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that. That was a great insight.
Great question, Karen. And next question goes to one of our wonderful sponsors, our friend Denise Daniels, straight out of Silicon Valley with that company.
Hello, Josh. You have an amazing marketplace for artisans and buyers, and Etsy is greatly admired here in the Silicon Valley. On the other side of segmentation, since the app company has a game-changing tech that tackles surveillance capitalism, my question for you is this: how do you view people and data in the emerging era of privacy-first internet?
I mean, it's incredibly important. It's something that I don't think consumers really understand. It's something that people, consumers have not understood it, and therefore I think many companies are sort of taking advantage of it. And it deserves a lot more scrutiny. It deserves more regulation. And I think the world is going to change a lot in the next coming years. At Etsy, we take privacy very seriously. We take protecting people's data very seriously. I mean, our business model is very transparent, if you will, because you buy things and sell things on Etsy. And so our use of data is quite straightforward. For people whose business model is advertising or data selling, it's sometimes less transparent what's actually happening. And I think consumers are right to be concerned. We saw things happen in 2016 and 2017 around the election, and 2020 around the election, I think, that all of us should be concerned about in terms of what's happening with people's data. Who's marketing what message to you? How clear is it who the actual marketer is? So I think it's a really important area of investment and scrutiny.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. By the way, for those of you thinking about a career and where you might want to go, information security, everything around security, I think is a big booming field that is going to be here to stay. Yeah.
Love it. And speaking of information security, our beloved advisory board member, Michael Corcione, is in that field and has a question as well.
Good afternoon, Jonathan. Yes, it is a good field, and very happy that we've brought on several interns from PACE, and they've all worked out very well. Hopefully they'll strive to do like you've done, Jonathan, with your career. Or Josh, I'm sorry. What I wanted to ask, and the question I put forward, is around cryptocurrency. So I saw in a recent interview, you mentioned it's not a strategy for Etsy today. You don't see it as a valid tender currently, needs more distribution. But are there indicators in the market where you would get into crypto, not wanting to lose a competitive advantage? But if not for Etsy, just your general long-term thoughts on crypto. I believe you also mentioned you're a personal holder of crypto for several years.
Yeah, I bought Bitcoin in 2013 on the thesis that it would be a good store of value. Without getting too geeky, you can have a store of value or you can have tender, but they don't need to be the same. So gold is a classic store of value. I buy gold to be safe, but you can't use it as tender. I can't walk into a grocery store and chip off a little bit of gold and pay for something. You can also have tender that's not a store of value. An example of that would be maybe the Venezuelan currency right now, which it devalues so fast that you need to spend it as soon as you get it, right? It becomes worth it overnight. And so the US dollar is an example of something that is both a store of value and tender. The British pound or the euro are both a store of value and tender. I bought Bitcoin on the belief that it could be a store of value. And I think it's early days on that. It's early days. But I bought with the thesis that there was a 95% chance that it would be worth nothing in time. But if it became a viable alternative to gold, it could be worth, 1,000 times what I paid for it. And so actually an expected return, that's not bad. If you do the math on that, that's not bad. It's played out pretty good so far. I wouldn't say there's a 95% chance that Bitcoin is worthless now. It's probably something less than 50, but still substantial. Like if you're going to buy Bitcoin, so gosh, how would I say? I think many friends ask, should I be investing in crypto? In my opinion, if you're thinking about it, you should invest with a multi-decade point of view. If you are thinking you're going to buy today so you can sell it for more in any period less than 5 years, you're just gambling. I mean, you can just go to Las Vegas and spend money. It's the same. Buy a lottery ticket, all the same. But I think with a long-term view, that could Bitcoin be a legitimate store of value over time? Yes, very possibly. And if enough people hold Bitcoin, could it then become tender? Yes. But I think first it would need to become a store of value before it became tender. So why am I not racing to implement Bitcoin on Etsy today? I have a payments team whose roadmap is very busy, and there's, to the point of the worthwhile many and the vital few. If I ask them to implement the acceptance of Bitcoin, that's a meaningful project for them, and there's many other things they would need to delay. And today in the developed world, in the developed is not the right term, in Western Europe and the United States, there's not a use case for Bitcoin for which there's not a better alternative. So if you want to pay someone and have there be no transaction fees and no recourse, we have that product, and it's called a debit card. So Bitcoin still today is something that is, I think, could play a very meaningful role. Where I think it will first gain traction is in places where you cannot trust the banking systems. And that's most of the world's population. And that's very meaningful. Many friends of mine, the people who convinced me to buy Bitcoin in 2013 were people who grew up in Argentina and Venezuela and Iceland, and where their families had lost everything due to hyperinflation. The economies and the banking systems were not well managed. And I think crypto will first gain widespread acceptance in those places. And only then would it find a real value, a real use in Western Europe, in places where the banking systems and currency are fairly well regulated.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We could spend hours on the topic, and I don't know who on here is already selling their NFTs on Etsy, but I suspect it's a good number of people. I'd love to turn the next question over to Maria Kolodkina, who was in the video and here in person.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for your useful advices we received today, and congratulations. My question is the following. After you became CEO at Etsy, what was your actual first moment or win that made you confident that the company is headed in the right direction? And relatedly, as a leader, what is your approach to determine the future focus and direction of the company of Etsy? Thank you.
Great questions. Thank you. So I tend to be very metrics driven. And so when arriving at Etsy, I brought only one thing. I didn't know what tactics we were going to implement to turn the company around. But I knew that the one thing that mattered was this metric called gross merchandise sales. Gross merchandise sales is how much did our sellers sell and our buyers buy yesterday or last week or last month. That's gross merchandise sales. A subset of that is Etsy's commission or our revenue. And a subset of that is profit. But what matters most at Etsy is gross merchandise sales, because that's the sum of our customers' success. And if our customers are succeeding, we will succeed. I can make revenue go up, but if I do it without making our customers more successful, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, right? So I was then and am today obsessed with GMS. I can tell you what the GMS was on Etsy pretty much every hour of every day. I check it hourly. When I started to gain optimism that our turnaround was working was when we had seen GMS decelerate every month and every quarter for the prior 3 years. And so when I arrived, I said, the only thing that matters is accelerating GMS. And we're going to stop doing everything and pick only the few things that are most likely to inflect the curve on GMS. And it was very painful for the team, very painful. 60% of people had new jobs within 5 weeks of me being in the company. It was dramatic change. We shut down huge parts of the business that just weren't going to drive growth, or certainly not in the time frame we needed, in order to focus on the few things that did matter. But actually, within 6 to 8 weeks, we actually saw that week over week, GMS was accelerating, and the things we were launching were actually working. And so the first month I arrived, GMS was growing 11% year over year, and 3 months later, it was growing 15% year over year. And so that was actually quite a marked inflection, and we knew at that point we could do this. We could do this.
Wow, that is fascinating. What a great question, Maria. Thank you. And I have a wonderful question from our very own Dr. Namshul Shin. Namshul, if you'd like to ask Josh.
Hi, thank you, Josh, for your support for Seidenberg. You said lifelong learning is critical these days, and you made a few career changes after you graduated college. And my question is very basic. College students, how can they prepare for lifelong learning while they are in college? And also, if you learn yourself after you graduate college, how did you? I mean, are there any good ways to learn, yourself? From I just want to hear from you based on your experience.
Yeah, I mean, not being scared of the unknown and being willing to ask questions. I have found that people are surprisingly generous with their knowledge if someone is genuinely interested to learn. And so I lead a large team of machine learning specialists. So these are people with often masters and PhDs in neural networks and all sorts of things that I did not study in college or graduate school. And so I will ask them, please teach me, what does a trees model mean? What is neural network, and how is it different than the models that came before? And I'm not afraid to ask questions, and I'm not afraid to appear dumb because I don't know those things, and I won't learn them until I ask. And so just being curious enough and willing to ask the questions, and then willing to take some time to then read. So my team will teach me, and they'll often recommend, hey, here's an article or two that you can read. Here's a book you can read on this. And I actually do the reading. And then they say, oh, you genuinely are interested. You're not just saying that. Okay, and now they're motivated to spend even more time. Actually, fortunately, I got a call I had an earnings call once every 3 months. I do an earnings call with our shareholders, as all public companies do. And a shareholder asked me a very specific question, an analyst, about our machine learning roadmap. And I was able to give quite a detailed answer. And my machine learning team was so excited. And I said, you guys should know I'm paying attention when you talk to me. I'm really paying attention. But that motivates them to want to do more. The other thing is that I am a voracious reader. I read a lot, 50 or more books a year. But when I say I read, I actually listen. So Audible has been life-changing for me. There are very few technologies that have done more to improve my quality of life than Audible. I have had a big problem with insomnia my whole life. I've always had a very hard time falling asleep and a hard time staying asleep. And so now I listen to books in bed. And it's wonderful. I listen, I learn, I learn so much, and it helps to get me to go to sleep. And now when I'm driving in a car, when I'm walking in town, whenever my ears are free and my eyes are not, I'm probably listening to a book. And it's been wonderful.
Would you recommend 1 or 2 books you read recently and you think interesting?
Oh gosh. Yeah. I read a lot of biographies. Just because I find so many lessons, what people did right and what they did wrong. And there's no such thing as a perfect reader. A perfect leader. The only perfect person is the person you don't know very well. The more you inspect anyone, the more every one of us is imperfect. But I'm having a hard time finding just one. Depending. I do think like Thinking Fast and Slow is a great book if you're interested in cognitive science. Yeah, it's hard for me to pick one, but
that's okay. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I'll have to come back, Josh, for reading list time. We'll have to.
Yeah.
Irene,
I could do that much easier than one.
I think so. I'm in the same boat all the time. But Irene, in our audience, had a wonderful kind of personal question, I think, on the same line. Irene, if you'd like to ask.
Hello, Josh. Congratulations, first of all. And my question has to do with, do you have a mentor or somebody that you go to for advice and inspiration that you look up to? If you can share with us.
Yeah, it's a good question. And almost everyone who's asked that question who is in my kind of position will tell you, yes, here's my mentor, here's my 2 mentors. Honestly, I don't. There hasn't been like 1 or 2 people who have taken me under their wing and really guided me. I became a CEO pretty young because I was an entrepreneur in my 20s. And then I ran a series of businesses that were owned by Etsy, but very independent and often their own location and far from headquarters. So I didn't really get a chance to work for a boss that really groomed me and trained me over a period of 5 or 10 years, which I do think would have been great. What I would say, though, is I'm a very active role modeler. And everyone I interact with does something better than me. And I look at that and I say, what do I need to do in this next meeting? And wow, Mary Smith is so great at that. How would Mary Smith handle this situation? And I do think that kind of thing, like actively. And is there an element of that I can sort of authentically own and authentically bring into this? If, everyone can smell it from a mile away when you're not authentic, when you're just trying to copy someone else or be like someone else. But if there's a part of that you can there's part of that I can authentically incorporate into my style, I do that a lot. I'm watching, and it's not necessarily people in positions of power, if you will. There's so much I see and admire from people all around me all the time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's such a lovely question, Irina. Thank you. And we have so many good questions that keep coming in, but one that I think really is nice to maybe close out with is from our very own Professor Yagen Gainch. There he is.
Hi, Josh. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hi.
Yeah, I was sort of really curious about two of the things that you said, and I think they're related to one another. And I want to ask about that. Like, so you were talking about the search experiences that your customers are having, and if I heard you correctly, you're either working on it or you will be working on that. And I believe like one of the challenges that companies like Etsy has is, and perhaps the other e-commerce companies don't have, is that creativity is an important component of your product offerings, right? And and that component is harder to makes it sort of harder to catalog the product, right? So it's sort of, I think, and I haven't seen. I've seen that as a problem. I've heard that being reported as a problem, but I haven't seen any solution to it. So sort of should we sort of expect Etsy to tackle that and solve it? By that I mean having creativity as a feature or a part of the search experience or the product offering experience.
So it's for those thinking about careers, machine learning is another wonderful career. And if you like statistics and probability and math, it's a great place to go. But yeah, we've made tremendous progress. The search problem at Etsy would have been literally unsolvable 10 years ago. And now we do, I think, we've made enormous progress and we're much better. So let me try to explain that challenge. There's over 100 million things for sale on Etsy. It's mind-boggling. If you walk into a Costco, they have maybe 50,000 things. So think we're like a couple of hundred Costco's worth of selection. If you put it all in one place, it would stretch for miles and miles. So, and the one thing that our product catalog has in common is that no two items are the same and they don't map to a catalog. So unlike Amazon, which has a catalog of everything, every mass manufactured product for sale, and it's mapping it to that catalog, we just get listings of things. And we have to decide what they are. And then we have to decide which are the most relevant for any given search query. So I'll give you an example. Coasters. There's about 200,000 coasters for sale on Etsy. These are like the things you put it on your table and put a glass on it, coaster, right? It's not the most popular item on Etsy. It's just an item on Etsy. We have about 200,000. So if I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, it's got the largest football stadium in America. If you sat in the middle of the football stadium in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and looked around, every single seat would have 2 coasters. That's how many coasters we have. If you walked into a Costco, it would sell nothing but coasters. That's how many coasters we have. We've got to decide the 30 that should go on the first page of search results. So that problem would have been an unsolvable problem without, we could have hired, 300 or 400 humans to only look at all the coasters and try to pick the 30. And they wouldn't have done a very good job, by the way. But now we use machine learning for that. And so our machine learning model needs to do a couple things. First, what is this thing? Is it a coaster or not a coaster? That turns out to be a pretty hard problem. The fact that it's a coaster. But our models are now quite good at that. And then what are the 30 coasters that are best for you? We're getting quite good at that as well. So when you search for something on Etsy now, we do a much better job of that. And I think you'll find quite a satisfying set of search results. And in fact, we even now close what we call the semantic gap, which is translating what you said to what you meant. So what do I mean by that? You might have typed cocktail attire for men into our search engine. And the correct search result would be a sports coat or blazer. Now, sports coat, the word sports and coat don't appear in cocktail attire for men. So somehow our search engine needed to know that the words you wrote were not the exact words that you're going to find in the title of the item. That is a miracle of computer science that is now possible that would have been impossible. By the way, all of the formulas that are used to do that have existed for decades, but the amount of computational power required to do that is only available now. It's brand new, and it's very exciting.
Wow. Wow. What a powerful conversation, Josh. And the takeaways for all of us from our undergraduates to our grad students and our faculty and our wonderful alums and all of the great people that have come from your world to recognize you this afternoon. This has been a great collection of life lessons on leadership, but also on how to treat people. And I will always be grateful to you for that. So thank you. I think it would be most appropriate if we could ask our dear president, Marvin Krisloff, to make closing comments.
Well, I think, Josh, it's a commentary on the thoughtful comments that you offered, that this has been the Zoom that I think we've retained the audience the most since the pandemic started, or at least it's certainly way up there. I don't know, Jonathan, I don't know if we have metrics on this, but you have kept everyone's brains and hearts engaged, and that's the way you lead, and we're very grateful. And what's great about having you on this Zoom is we know that you're not going to be a stranger, and you're going to continue working with us, and we look forward to seeing you in person. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the recognition. I'm very honored. It's great to partner with such a wonderful institution. Thank you.
We look forward to having you back with us again. And thank you, President Krisloff. And again, I must thank...
And Jonathan, I don't know if we properly acknowledge that Peter Gay Clark is actually a trustee of Pace University, Josh. So she is a very important person at Pace University in so many ways.
So many ways.
Yeah.
So we must, of course, again, thank our title sponsor, who is in fact our awardee, Josh Silverman. Our visionary sponsors from Bronzeware, Morgan Stanley, the PVH Foundation, and PwC. Our supporter sponsors, including Accenture, ADP, Deloitte & Touche, High Point, National Grid, New York Presbyterian, and Qualitest. And our friend sponsors, including Seventh Online, The At Company, thank you, Denise, Blue Yonder, Genpact, HKA, Infosys, MuleSoft, PwC, Sirius, Tillerman, Verizon, Wilkie Farr and Gallagher, and thank you so much, Heather. And our Pace alum and Seidenberg board member, Mike Zabranik, Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Fiserv. And I would very much like to thank, again, the advisory board of the Seidenberg School for being here and for your time, talent, and financial support. We are so grateful to you and to our community, our staff and faculty and wonderful students, our alumni, and all of our friends. Thank you for being here to honor this wonderful human being. And Josh, we look forward to seeing you and having you back with us soon. We wish you every success. Good night, everyone. We will see you soon.